The 1936 US presidential election took place during a time of significant economic hardship, a period that tested the resilience and spirit of the American people. The Great Depression had gripped the nation, leaving millions unemployed and struggling to survive. Breadlines and soup kitchens became a common sight as families faced unprecedented levels of poverty and despair. President Herbert Hoover, who had been in office since 1929, faced mounting criticism for his handling of the crisis. His administration's response was widely seen as inadequate and out of touch with the needs of ordinary Americans. His policies, seen by many as ineffective, fueled a desire for change across the country. Public protests and the rise of makeshift shanty towns, known as Hoovervilles, symbolized the widespread discontent. In 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the Democratic governor of New York, emerged as a beacon of hope. His charismatic leadership and promise of a New Deal resonated deeply with a populace desperate for solutions. Roosevelt promised a New Deal for the American people, a series of programs and reforms aimed at revitalizing the economy and providing relief to the suffering masses. His vision included bold initiatives to address unemployment, poverty, and economic instability. His message resonated with voters, and he won the election by a landslide, defeating Hoover. The victory marked a turning point as Americans placed their hopes in Roosevelt's ability to lead them out of the Depression. Roosevelt's first term was marked by bold and unprecedented action. He wasted no time in implementing his New Deal policies, which aimed to provide immediate relief, recovery, and reform. He implemented a wide range of programs, including the establishment of the Social Security system, which provided a safety net for the elderly and unemployed, the creation of the Works Progress Administration, which generated millions of jobs through public works projects, and the implementation of financial regulations aimed at stabilizing the banking system. These measures were designed to restore confidence in the financial sector and prevent future economic collapses. These initiatives, while controversial, provided much-needed relief and hope to millions of Americans. The New Deal's impact was felt across the nation as people began to see tangible improvements in their lives. As the 1936 election approached, the nation was still grappling with the effects of the Depression. The economic situation remained dire, but there were signs of progress and a cautious sense of optimism. However, there was a sense of cautious optimism. Roosevelt's New Deal policies had begun to show some signs of success, and the economy was slowly showing signs of recovery. People were starting to believe that better days were ahead. Roosevelt's New Deal policies had begun to show some signs of success, and the economy was slowly showing signs of recovery. Public works projects and social programs were making a difference in communities across the country. Yet the situation remained fragile, and the outcome of the election would have a profound impact on the future direction of the country. The stakes were high, and the American people were keenly aware that their votes would shape the nation's path forward. The 1936 presidential election pitted incumbent President Franklin D. Roosevelt, representing the Democratic Party, against Alfred Landon, the Republican governor of Kansas. This election was not just a contest between two men, but a clash of ideologies and visions for the future of America. Roosevelt, seeking a second term, campaigned on the success of his New Deal programs, promising continued economic recovery and social reform. His New Deal had already brought significant changes to the American landscape, aiming to lift the nation out of the Great Depression. He presented himself as a champion of the working class, a leader who understood the plight of ordinary Americans. Roosevelt's charisma and empathy resonated deeply with those who had been hit hardest by the economic downturn. Landon, on the other hand, emerged as the candidate of change. He positioned himself as a sensible alternative to Roosevelt's expansive government programs. While he acknowledged the need for some government intervention in the economy, he criticized the New Deal as being too radical and fiscally irresponsible. Landon argued that Roosevelt's policies were creating a dependency on government aid. He advocated for a more balanced approach, one that emphasized individual initiative and limited government. Landon believed that the American spirit of self-reliance and entrepreneurship was being stifled by excessive government control. The campaign was fiercely contested, reflecting the deep divisions within American society. Both candidates held numerous rallies, drawing large and passionate crowds, each side convinced of their candidate's vision for the country. Roosevelt's supporters, largely concentrated in urban areas and among labor unions, praised his efforts to alleviate the suffering caused by the Depression. They believed that his policies were essential for the recovery and future prosperity of the nation. They saw him as a transformative leader who was willing to challenge the status quo to help those in need. Roosevelt's ability to connect with the common man made him a beloved figure among his supporters. Landon's supporters, primarily from rural areas and the business community, viewed Roosevelt's policies with suspicion. They were concerned about the long-term implications of such extensive government intervention. They feared that his programs were leading America down a path towards socialism and undermining the principles of individual liberty and free enterprise. The debate over the New Deal highlighted the broader ideological battle over the role of government in American life. The election became a referendum on the role of government in society, a debate that continues to resonate in American politics today. The outcome of the 1936 election would shape the direction of the nation for years to come, influencing the political landscape and the lives of countless Americans. The Literary Digest, a popular general interest magazine, held a prominent position in American media during the early 20th century. It was a staple in many households, providing readers with a wide array of content that ranged from news and politics to culture and entertainment. Founded in 1890, the magazine had established a reputation for its comprehensive coverage of current events, cultural trends, and political affairs. Its in-depth articles and insightful commentary made it a trusted source of information for millions of Americans. One of its most popular features was its presidential election poll, which it had conducted successfully since 1916. This poll became a hallmark of the magazine, drawing significant attention every election cycle. The Literary Digest's polling methodology was straightforward yet seemingly effective. It relied on a large-scale mail survey, which was a novel approach at the time. The magazine would send out millions of postcards to potential voters across the country, asking them to indicate their preferred candidate. This method allowed them to gather a vast amount of data directly from the electorate. These postcards were mailed to individuals listed in telephone directories, automobile registration rosters, and magazine subscriber lists. This diverse sampling was intended to capture a broad cross-section of the American public. This approach had yielded remarkably accurate results in previous elections, correctly predicting the winner in every presidential race from 1916 to 1932. The consistency of their success bolstered the magazine's credibility. The magazine's success in forecasting electoral outcomes had earned it a reputation for reliability and trustworthiness among the American public. Readers eagerly awaited the results of each poll, confident in the magazine's ability to predict the future. Its polls were widely followed and considered to be a reliable indicator of public sentiment. The Literary Digest became a central part of the national conversation during election years. In 1936, confident in its proven track record, the Literary Digest embarked on its most ambitious polling effort yet, aiming to solidify its position as the leading authority on election forecasting. The stakes were higher than ever, and the magazine was determined to maintain its unblemished record. The magazine sent out a staggering 10 million postcards, a massive undertaking that reflected its commitment to capturing the pulse of the nation. This monumental effort was a testament to the magazine's dedication to accuracy and thoroughness. Little did they know that this endeavour would expose a critical flaw in their methodology, one that would have far-reaching consequences for the magazine's reputation and the future of polling. The 1936 election would become a turning point, revealing the limitations of their approach and changing the landscape of public opinion research forever. In 1936, the Literary Digest, bolstered by its previous successes, confidently employed its established method for predicting the presidential election. They distributed a massive 10 million postcards across the nation, aiming to collect a vast sample size for their poll. Their selection process, however, harboured a critical flaw that would ultimately undermine the accuracy of their prediction. The magazine relied heavily on telephone directories, automobile registration lists, and their own subscriber base to compile their mailing list. While this approach might have seemed comprehensive at the time, it inadvertently introduced a significant bias into their sample. During the Great Depression, access to telephones and automobiles, as well as magazine subscriptions, was largely limited to wealthier Americans. This meant that the Literary Digest sample disproportionately represented a more affluent segment of the population, a demographic that tended to favour Republican candidates. This overrepresentation of a particular socio-economic group skewed the poll's findings. The Literary Digest failed to account for the significant economic disparities that characterized American society during the Depression. Their methodology assumed a level of homogeneity in the electorate that simply did not exist. The voices of lower-income Americans, a demographic hit hardest by the economic crisis and more likely to support Roosevelt and his New Deal policies, were largely absent from their data.